Hello, my name is Barry. I am the co-owner and founder of The Cider Crate, an Ontario blog that's designed to talk about various cider that we get in the region. If you've found us and you're listening, you've stumbled across our very first edition of The Cider Crate as we walk through tours of various cideries across the province and maybe around the world if we get a chance to do some external work. However, over the next 30 minutes or so, you will hear work from the likes of County Cider, located in Picton, more specifically in Wapoos, in the Prince Edward County area. We talk with the late Grant Howes, who actually passed away this past January 2017 at the age of 60 in his sleep. We were saddened to hear the news, and we wish Jennifer, who you also will hear later on in this interview with, and the rest of the County Cider family the best going forward, and our deepest condolences. But we catch up with Grant and have a chance to talk with him about the cidery, what's happened with it, how the apples were grown, and more about the whole process. So please join me and my co-owner and founder of the Cider Crate, Bethany, as we join Grant in the fields, heading on the way out past the barn as he sees an old friend from down the road who's working around the farm as well.
It used to be when it was a horse barn, eh? Okay. He's one of our neighbors. He goes way back. In fact, I remember when he was in high school doing work around here. So now he's retired.
So you can stumble home then if he's a neighbor?
Yes. So anyway, like I was saying, we my family bought this farm in the mid-70s, and it was a typical orchard then, where we grow the apples, we pick the apples and sell them to a wholesaler, and they sell them to a Loblaws or things like that. So and it worked out very well until global trade started happening, and with the Chinese entering the market, with the South American apples hitting our markets here, you really couldn't make any money growing apples. And I was out west at the time, and cider has always been a big thing on the west coast. And I came back, I guess, in the early 80s and started looking at turning this or adding a derivative product like cider to our portfolio of products. So that's what we did. But the one thing I really wanted to do was bring that taste of British cider here. My mentor, Al Pickett from the Marydale Cider Works, had managed to bring in some English-style bittersweet apples, and the ciders he was making out in British Columbia were just unbelievably good, like nothing I'd ever had before. Like if you can think of like the ciders back then, we're talking about light and easy, which were very cloying, very sweet, like more coolers than ciders. I didn't like them, but the ones he was making were terrific. And so I came back here with a plan in the early 90s and started a cidery, which was part-time. And I guess from the 93 to when we first got our license to 2002, it was, like I said, a part-time thing, but I did manage to collect and graft very rare traditional cider apples that were in North America and graft them here, and I'll show you my little orchard here. So anyways, some of these are some of the results of our endeavors. This is a young block of Kingston Black here. Have you heard of Kingston Black? Well, Kingston Black is kind of the holy grail when it comes to cider apples. Are you familiar with the difference between cider apples and regular apples?
A little bit.
Okay, well, cider apples, the big difference, other than they have a different flavor profile, is they have a high level of tannin. And tannin, as you know, is like when you bite into a grape seed, how it dries your mouth out. These apples have a lot of this tannin in it, probably 10 to 100 times more than you get in normal culinary apples from North America. And the result of that, when you use just a little of these in your ciders, it provides a really great finish to your product. So if you have even a sweet cider with those tannins, it cuts that cloyiness at the end and cleans out your tongue, grabs on all those little fat molecules, and prepares your mouth for the next sip of cider. So for us, it's very important to have these varietals. The big challenge, of course, was growing these because no one had ever grown them in Canada before, this far north. So we didn't know which ones would work, which ones wouldn't. And what we found is testing them, we've narrowed down to about 4 that really work well here in this area. And that's being Bulmer's Norman, Kingston Black, Dabonet, and Yarlington Mill. And there's a few more that I'm still experimenting with from the Calvados area, Normandy area of France, such as Frequent Rouge. But these are the Holy Grail. That Kingston Black is one of the only apples that you can make a varietal cider from. When I say varietal, like if you compare it to wine, where people make a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Chardonnay, Kingston Black has all the right constituents. It has the right flavor profile, the right level of acidity, and of course that ever important level of tannin that you need. So what I'll do, I'll pick one and let you try, okay? They're a little young yet, but give that a bite and see what you think.
So size-wise, they
Oh yeah, they're just sizing now because we've of course gone through a terrible drought here, and so do you notice? Do you taste that bitterness? And I'll move down. I'll give you even a one that has a more profound flavor profile. But these, as they grow, their cider apples are very interesting because they're very mealy, and to eat them they're terrible. And but when you press them, you can throw it on the ground. It's okay. But when you press them and include them in your blends, they really add that depth. And that's why I think our Wapoose, for example, 4 years ago was picked as one of the top 10 ciders in London, England, because we did have these. And of course, making hybrid blends of North American apples like a Northern Spy and Russet really combines to make a unique and a wonderful tasting product. So
what would the split be if you were using this and applying the locals to?
Well, it depends. Like you don't want to go overboard with it because a lot of people aren't used to these tannins. So we'll use, for example, in our Wapoose about 10% of these apples in it. County probably anywhere from 15 to 20% depending on the year, and then you get into our Tortured Path, which is roughly 75%. And like you said, you've had that, and you'll notice with the Tortured Path, you'll get that barnyardiness, that image of walking a horse barn with freshly laid out hay, and that's what we want from our Tortured Path. Plus, we also put that under what's called a malolactic conversion or malolactic fermentation, where you take the malic acid that's in these apples, and with a bacteria action, you convert it into lactic acid plus other flavors, and that provides a better mouthfeel and less acidity. And you can do that and get away with that with cider apples, but not really with culinary apples. It just ends up to be an insipid drink. So you need those cider apples. So come on down and I'll show you some more and give you another taste.
Do you do anything else on the side, or is it now all cider based?
It's 100% cider. I'd say we went from an orchard with a cidery to a cidery with an orchard in 2002. And we've never looked back, really. My dream was to bring cider to Ontario, and we did that. We were the first cidery here, and that was in 1995. I guess I got my license when I was a young lad, so I didn't know any better.
Are.
Yeah. But we've, continued to propagate because I firmly believe that to make good cider, you have to grow the apples or know something about the apples that are going into it. Not that a lot of people are making terrific ciders from, juice they're buying, but I'm not going to explain this. There's two schools of thought here. One is the brewery end of things, where you utilize technology and your knowledge to make cider based on a background of making beer, which means that the juice becomes just a secondary ingredient, okay? And that's where you get a lot of like hop ciders coming out or these weird flavored ciders. And we do that too, but our true ciders like our Tortured Path, our County Cider, and our Wapoose is all based on the apples. And I'm a firm believer that you need those apples to make a truly world-class product, and that's what we're doing. Like these trees here, this is a very interesting tree. This is part of my experiment. I had two types of apples from from Normandy. One was called Frequent Rouge, which is this, and Benet Rouge, which is that row. And as you can see, the Benet Rouge has not done well, but this has flourished here. In fact, I just planted out another 1,000 trees of this. Here, try this one if you want to taste real tannin. Okay, you don't have to swallow it; just take a bite. Now you'll notice how bitter it is, but before that bitterness comes through, you'll notice wonderful flavors coming through. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want. And this is primarily used in Normandy for Calvados. In fact, they didn't have a name for this for like 300-400 years. Right? In fact, I've traced some of these varieties, these old French varieties, back to the times of Charlemagne, 800 AD. So I hope that doesn't turn you off cider.
It only makes me a little bit more.
Okay. So one thing too, the names like these, I should mention, we do all our own grafting here, which is really important. So as you can see, we've got all these trees are supported by their own posts, and the reason for that is if you look, well, I'll show you. If you look at the grafts here, see a graft right here, this big knob here. That's where we've grafted the variety onto the rootstock. And what the rootstock does is, it's kind of like the brains of the plant. It controls when it goes into dormancy, when it comes out of dormancy, and most importantly, how big the plant will get. And these are all dwarfing rootstock. So it dwarfs the rootstock, which means it doesn't grow that big. In fact, if you look like our northern spies there, or Max, they're over 25 years old and they're still really small. But by posting them and securing them like this, what happens is the trees put all their energy into producing fruit rather than wood. And if you hear, all these are little fruit spurs that next year will all be apples. And that's what you want to see.
So every once in a while there's one that's got some apples to it.
Yes.
Is that just a year older, or is that
it depends.
It just decided it was going to fruit this year?
Yeah, it would depend. And that's one of the big challenges. A lot of these varieties want to fruit every other year, like they fruit and then take a year off. And so what we have to do, and we're doing it slowly because we're just learning, is take off like anywhere from 50 to 70% of the crop to get it into producing annually. Yeah. It's interesting. But come on down here and I'll show you some. I hope I'm not boring you with this.
No, this is great.
Just like, because everyone's excited about cider, but they should be excited about the fact that we can grow these apples here.
And it's an education for us as well.
Yeah. So well, over here I'll show you these. This doesn't look very good right now, but this is our nursery, one of our nurseries. Because it was such a drought here, we haven't had to look after it really. But last year we did all the grafting here. So these little trees will be planted out next year. But remember I was talking about the rootstock? And what we do here is graft on the variety, right? So you can just see the rootstock's a different color. Then we graft it on the variety, and that takes over the plant, right? So next year this will be planted out.
So it's essentially as though you were putting an artificial limb onto the roots, and then it grows from there.
Yeah, and this technique's been used for 2,000 years. So, and over here I'll show you some more plants. I hope I'm not boring you with these, because I could talk apples all day long. This is another one of our newer plantings. You notice we're planting these about 4 feet apart. Now when I'm planting my newer out, like I put another 5,000 trees in this year, and these are about 15 feet apart and 4 feet from each other, or the rows are 15 feet wide and 4 feet apart. My new plantings are 12 feet wide and 3 feet apart. So we're cramming a lot more apples into the space, and what we're hoping to achieve there is going from, say, 500 bushels to the acre to 1,000 bushels to the acre. And with that, hopefully, we'll see, it just makes more sense to grow that many more apples. Plus, growing it like this, like kind of like a trellis, like grapes, down the road, they are coming out with mechanical picking machines that go above the rows and use fingers to gently pick them. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important, because labor is becoming more and more hard to get. So So it's tough. But I want to give you a taste of one apple if I can find it in here. Yes, right here. This is called it's an ugly looking apple, but this is a Medea or Medel. Oh. Anyways, it's called the golden apple, Medel or something like that. Take a bite of that, and you'll taste it. Kind of tastes like a very sweet, but it does have the tan in there, right? And we think we'll be able to do varietal ciders from this once we have enough being propagated. Have you tried one yet, or
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Okay. What's up, hun?
That's very good.
Yeah, but it's a different profile of taste than you get from regular apples, eh?
Oh yeah.
And that's really going to add to another dimension. Like in France too, when you look at when they make wines there, it's not one varietal they make a wine out of. Like the Bordeaux area has grapes that grow really well there, and they'll blend them to make like a Bordeaux. So you'll have Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Petit Bordeaux, all these kinds that hopefully the sum is greater than the parts, so to speak. What's up?
You have less than an hour before you have something for tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll continue
Are you guys going
on.
to be at the show tomorrow, right?
Yeah, yeah, we're there and we're covering. The hope is to go through a quick little profile of all of the different groups with some video. We're one of the official
Supporting sponsors.
Sponsors.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we'll go up and.
I've got everything set up
Perfect.
on the patio.
So this is a real treat you're going to have today. I think it's a real treat. Maybe you guys will think it's crap. I don't know. So we do like, we do the main ciders, but we do a lot of flavored ciders as well. And because of our portfolio and trying to reach out to all the different types of cider lovers, people who like that brewing model, for example, or the traditionalists, we hope to cover everything. And there is a real dichotomy. A lot of traditional cider makers really poo-poo these guys that I call the Oregon model, which is using apple juice more like hops, as opposed to the different juices that you can get from apples themselves. Like Reverend Nat probably epitomizes that the most with his hop ciders, which are just unbelievably great, and apricot ciders and all kinds of different things they make.
And they're based out of where?
Out of Oregon.
Out of Oregon?
Yeah, I mean, Oregon is not only when it comes to craft beer and of course Pinot Noir, but when it comes to that beer model of cider making, you've got to go to Oregon, and I highly suggest if you true cider lovers get out there.
The first cider that I had outside of here, other than a couple in BC, was a trip to Portland, and I fell in love with one called Spire.
Oh yeah,
that was there, and it was sort of 3-4 years ago.
Right.
Just a great opportunity, and I could totally. I know I'm going out west next year in June, so I think maybe I'll have to make sure I do the trip again across the
Portland,
ferry.
Washington State. I mean, even on Vancouver Island, there's some great cideries happening there.
Yeah.
And of course, you got to go to Marydale if you're on Vancouver Island. Yeah, we'll head through here, and of course our barns too. I mean, we really believe in our heritage. So, like this barn was built in 1832.
So at this point of the tour, we moved out of the fields and into the tasting patio where they're setting up for their afternoon of music and drinks for about the 50 or so people that were around the house at that exact moment. You're listening to the Cider Crate's first podcast series where we head out and talk to a handful of different cideries across the area. And we are in the middle and just about to sit down and chat with Grant and Jennifer about more of the material that they make in the county cider area. So we're joined by Jennifer as we sit on the table, and have a drink and sample the latest from the summer of 2016.
This cider is in a 750 ml bottle, of course. We made this in collaboration with Lighthall Vineyards. And Glenn Simmons out at Lighthall is one of the best winemakers I've ever come across, other than Jen here. And so we provided the juice, and he did everything else. And what makes this really different is the way it was carbonated. It was naturally carbonated like a champagne. So it's got lots of CO2 in it. And you'll notice the mousse. Like generally, cider does not have a mousse like that or a foam. But that's because generally ciders are carbonated at about 15 pounds per square inch. And because of the way this was carbonated, it's at roughly 45 pounds per square inch. So you get a lovely mousse, just like in a fine champagne. And this is a very dry, very austere cider, primarily made with russet apples.
Actually, it's not that dry.
It's not dry? No? Well, it's about 3 grams of sugar.
It's 8% alcohol. There's no resistance.
So. And one thing,
Press.
when you're looking at cider and you hold it up, I mean, of course, smelling it's very important to get the aromas coming off, like, you know, there's apple peel coming off there and all this. But when you look at the color, if you get a really light colored, almost white colored, you know it's made from culinary apples, right? And these, and there's nothing the matter with that. But these, it just tells you that they're made with late season apples, and it's been fermented properly and given time in the barrel and that sort of thing. So anyways, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Yeah. You're one of the first people to try this. Hope you like it.
Wow.
That's really good. Very smooth.
Very refreshing.
Yeah.
It's just like a fine champagne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can taste not only the russets there, well, I can taste the russets, but those tannins are there from, you know, of course, the wasps like it too.
Yeah.
But the tannins are there to provide that cleansing of your mouth. And of course, all our ciders, like most ciders, people don't think of them as a companion to food, but we find here especially, it goes great with simple foods like Thai food, anything hot, curries, it's great.
Well, you're doing. You have someone doing the pairing, do you not? Tomorrow at the festival.
Do we have one?
So someone's. Are you sponsoring a pairing, a food pairing session?
During the VIP event.
Yeah.
No. There's somebody that's doing that.
You're just sponsoring, I believe. Yeah.
We'll be there. There's a chef. I remember I was mentioning
Yes,
about
okay.
the chef that's going to be there.
So anyways, that's about it. Any other questions?
I have a list of some basic ones.
Sure.
But I don't know if I want to take your time away from it,
well,
and we could
We
also.
already covered a lot of them.
Well,
No, go ahead.
the other option too is maybe you'd like to provide some answers for it. That way we have different
Depends on what the
voices.
questions are.
Oh, they're pretty easy.
Just by way of background, Jen's my partner, and she's been here since 2002 now. 2000, 16 years, and she was one of the first graduates from the winemaking course at Loyalist College.
There we go.
So when I started working here, I was actually the winemaker because Grant had planted grapevines in 1999 at the beginning of the whole wine industry here in the county. And we were doing cider and wine. And now we're just doing cider because we don't feel the need to compete with 40 other wineries in the county. So I ended up becoming the cider maker instead of a winemaker.
Excellent.
Grant had to teach me everything about cider making.
Now, the whole process is the whole process done on site, or you do bottling off site?
It used to be all done on site, but we ran out of space quite a number of years ago, and we were fortunate enough to find a building in town that had all the power and water that we needed. So we do all the harvesting and pressing here of our own apples and the fermenting, and then we move it to town as we need it, and that's where it gets filtered, blended, and then either bottled or kegged.
What are some of the challenges with the actual making of the product and sales in your area here?
I think the biggest challenge is probably consistency. because every year the apples are different. It could be a dry year like this year, so we expect that we'll get a lot of sugar in the apples, but we won't get much yield from them. So that's going to be a challenge, and then trying to blend the different types of apples so that the taste is consistent from year to year is one of the biggest challenges that we have.
Have you seen a change in the sales and the ability to make sales through the way the system has worked of late?
Well, it's really nice that we're now allowed to sell through the grocery store channel, which has been good for us. It hasn't been huge, but I understand the government's going to be selling off another 150 licenses by the end of this year, so we expect that that's going to increase as more licenses become available. Loblaws has been a big supporter of ours, and we're getting repeat orders from them on a daily basis, so that's been good. The farmers market opportunity is certainly there for us, but we simply don't have the manpower to do farmers markets. And to be honest, we sell out of everything that we make every year. So that's become a challenge as well, is keeping up with demand.
Now, how many different varieties do you currently have?
Of cider?
Yeah.
So we have 7, let's see, we have County and Wapoose, peach, pear, farro, blood orange, root beer, and tortured path. So that's 8, and then we do our ice cider. So right now we have what's our barrel-aged ice cider. So that's a special one that we did in barrels made by a local cooper who made them out of cherry, hickory, oak, and ash. So each barrel has 4 different types of wood, so it's a very special ice cider. We're currently out of our regular ice cider, so we'll have to
We also do, it's funny because when you talk about what varieties you make, you talk about the ciders we make, I think of apples, right?
Yes.
So that's just the background.
That's what I was asking.
But the one market where we, in our keg market, because one-offs and bars want, new products every month kind of thing. So we do a lot of derivative products, like we'll have peach and we'll have blackberry juice one month, or we'll add ginger, which is
we
great.
did peach ginger. We've done blackberry peach, which has been really popular. We've done a citrus cider, which is grapefruit and blood orange. We've done hop ciders. We did blackberry sage, which was really unusual and incredibly popular as well. So, yeah.
And that helps you plan for if you decide you want to put out a larger line of it for maybe the next season or so.
Yeah. It's kind of like you're doing a beta test market.
Yeah.
So, and that's where the root beer came from. And I think root beer is going to be the surprise hit of 2017. We'll see, though.
So where do you get the ideas for it? Like, is root beer just because you like root beer, or
just traveling?
We were at Cider Days down in Massachusetts last November, so almost a year ago. And we always go and check out what's new in the liquor stores down there. And root beer beers were starting to make their appearance back then. And we thought, root beer, we could do a root beer flavored cider. So it took us 8 months working on the flavor to get it just the way we wanted it. And unfortunately, Mill Street beat us to the punch with their root beer beer. Came out a couple of weeks before our root beer cider. But
it's like 4 or 5 of them now that you can get. And that's been the big thing this year, which is really neat to see the cider angle for it, too.
Well, and just for the record, we made our application to the liquor board before any of these beer companies did, but we were turned down.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we're so far ahead all the time. They turned down our blood orange last year when we put it in, and
now blood orange is a huge flavor in Europe.
And I guess my last question then would be, we're sampling something you're working on here. Do you have something planned for next year as a big release outside of, say, the first little bits of the root beer you just talked about?
Probably some more of this. We only did about 80 cases of this, and so we were really pleased with the results. So I think we're going to do another collaboration with Glenn at Lighthall and make some more of this Charmat cider.
And now that our apples, our traditional cider apples are coming on, we're going to have more of these to work with, more colors to the palate, so to speak. So
and certainly more tortured path cider is in the coming for next year. And who knows, we might try a single varietal because now we've got so many cider apples growing, we could do a single varietal Dabinet or Kingston Black, possibly, something like that.
That's very neat. So just really quickly then, I'm assuming that means that the majority of your time creating the product, other than the growing season, is like late August till November, December. Then you do bottling, fermenting, all that rest of that stuff, and then it starts to launch in the
spring. Summer.
So are you, other than say the support staff here that's doing the food and the tasting and so on, do you still have as many staff on board as you're going through that process, or is it a little quieter and it's more the two of you and a couple core members?
Yeah, during the winter it's just a few core members in production. There's about 8 of us full-time that do a lot of work in the winter, catching up on things and trying to bring up new ideas for the following year.
And we're really big. Most of our staff that works full time has done all kinds of cider courses in the States or like us in England.
Yeah.
So we probably have more years of cider.
Six of our staff have done the Peter Mitchell cider course over the years.
Which is really important. And if you're really into cider, I suggest you take that course.
So is that online, or is that
you gotta go to Cornell.
You gotta go to
You gotta go to Cornell
okay.
or to Washington State.
Okay.
He does it there.
Highly worth it.
Yeah. And
It's very hard to get into his classes now because there's so much demand, because they only do 24 people at a time.
Right.
Do they have coursework available that they've given you? Maybe some stuff we can borrow and read?
Really,
I do have a link. So Danielle, my production manager, and I went to learn how to be cider judges at the Great Lakes International Cider and Perry competition. So you go on the Friday and you sit with all of these other BJCP
gotta run.
people, and you learn how to be a cider judge. You should definitely sign up for it as like a volunteer. You learn, and then they put you with other judges, more seasoned judges, and they'll put you in categories, and you get to judge ciders all weekend. And it's a lot of fun, and it's very, very interesting and informative. So you should definitely do something like that. But I remember one of the guys gave me a link to a course that you can do online. It's some sort of, let's see if I can find it, cider exam. Yeah, so it's the beer judging people, the BJCP organization. They do a cider exam now.
Okay.
And so I got the link right here, and you can.
Do you want to take a photo of that?
Yeah, sure. So it's just. I've only had a cursory glance at it, so.
Had an idea. We went looking for a cider website about reviews, and we couldn't find anything for Ontario. So we're like, we should just create it ourselves, right?
We've got, let's see, about 100 of them at home. All sit in boxes, different types. Every time we come across something, we grab it. And then we've sampled maybe another 50, 60 in locations, but almost all primarily here. We've had a little foray over into Quebec, but almost everything has been
So the
whatever's
ones you
here.
currently have at home, you say this other 100, they're unopened?
Yes.
How long have you had them?
Some are like 6 months.
Yeah, drink them.
We're working on it.
I found that too. I would pick up bottles in the States when I found them in cider days, like in November, and then you go to drink them in the spring, and they're horrible.
Yeah.
They're still not quite. You got to drink cider when it's fresh, really. People always ask us, how long will this last? And I tell them, well, until it's gone. Because we don't really want you to save it. We want you to drink it and come back for more. But cider is best drunk fresh. Like within 3 months of bottling.
Well, we've got some work to do there. So much for dry.
Well, at this point of the interview, the band started to play in the background and our recording kind of got drowned out, unfortunately. But we just chatted a little bit more about some of the things you were hearing in the last 10 minutes or so, and more about cider in general before Grant took off and we set up to head out to our next stop on the cider tour that we're doing. We were actually on our way down from Ottawa, which is the hometown and base of where the Cider Crate is located out of, to the Toronto Cider Festival, a afternoon and evening in downtown Toronto, which was absolutely fantastic, and happy to say we'll be back there again this year for 2017 to cover. Once again, I want to thank you for checking out and listening to this first podcast series. There are more going to be made available if they're not already up at the website, which is thecidercrate.com, and you can just browse on the top link to see what we have there. Of course, there are hundreds of reviews up there as well, including bar reviews of ciders and right from the bottle as well, including a handful from County. So if you want to take a look and read at what some of the things we've sampled from the cidery, you can do so at the website, thecidercrate.com. We're very happy to take feedback as well, and of course, there is our social media pages on Twitter and Facebook, so we highly encourage you to connect with us there and follow us along with the travels. Once again, thanks to County Cider for the opportunity to come by. We wish you all the best going forward with the changes and challenges that you'll have for the 2017 season, missing such an amazing and individual in Grant with his passing. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you again. My name's Barry, and have a good one.